Have you ever noticed the loudest pain is the one no one can hear? You smile, you speak, you keep moving. But deep down, your heart is screaming in silence. And yet that silence, the one that hurts so much, it's also where Allah begins to heal you. Because sometimes Allah pulls you away from people, from noise, from everything, not to punish you, but to bring you closer to Him. Silence is not emptiness. It's where the heart finally stops chasing voices and starts listening to its Creator. When the world becomes too loud, the heart loses its balance. The constant noise, opinions, and comparisons drown out the whispers of our soul. We begin to forget what peace feels like because our hearts are always reacting to something outside of us. But when you step back from the chaos and sit in silence, something begins to shift inside. You start to hear the quiet voice you've been ignoring, the one that knows what truly matters. In silence, you no longer chase validation or answers from people. You begin to realize that what you were searching for was never out there. It was within you all along. The heart, when still, starts to speak the language of sincerity. It tells you where you've been wounded, where you've drifted, and where you need to return. It becomes a mirror, showing you your truth without the noise of the world distorting it. Every pain you've buried begins to surface gently in that stillness. You don't run from it anymore. You finally listen. Silence doesn't demand that you fix everything. It simply asks you to feel, to acknowledge, to be present. And in that presence, the heart starts to release what it was holding on to. The weight of years, the ache of disappointment, the sting of regret, all begin to melt in the quiet awareness that Allah sees what you cannot express. As the silence deepens, you begin to understand that every longing inside you was never random. Each ache was a call to return, not to people, not to places, but to your Creator. The soul recognizes the sound of its home in the quiet. It finds rest in remembrance, comfort in solitude, and strength in surrender. The very stillness that once felt empty now becomes sacred space, where you are closest to Allah. So when the world becomes too loud, don't be afraid to step into silence. It's not loneliness. It's a meeting place between your heart and the one who made it. It's where every unspoken prayer is heard, every unanswered question finds meaning, and every broken piece begins to heal. In silence, the heart remembers what it was created for: peace, connection, and divine love. In silence, the heart begins to realign itself with what truly matters. When the noise fades and the distractions fall away, you begin to feel something sacred, a gentle pull back toward your Creator. It's in that stillness that you realize how far you may have drifted, not because Allah was distant, but because the world's constant noise kept you from hearing Him. Silence becomes a compass, quietly guiding your heart back home. When you stop speaking and start listening, you discover that healing doesn't always come through more words or explanations. It comes through surrender, through the quiet recognition that Allah has always been near, even when you felt alone. Every heartbeat becomes a reminder that His mercy flows within you, unseen but constant. You begin to feel a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, a calm that whispers, "You were never forgotten." In the depth of silence, your prayers change. They are no longer long or complicated. They become simple, sincere, a whisper of the heart rather than the tongue. You find yourself speaking less, but feeling more. You sit, you breathe, and in that moment, you realize that Allah understands every tear, every pause, every ache you never found words for. Silence becomes your dua, and your dua reaches where words cannot. The world teaches us to fill every moment with noise, but silence teaches us to listen, to the signs around us, to the peace within us, and to the voice of faith that never stopped calling. You begin to see how every delay, every disappointment, every unanswered prayer was actually an invitation to draw closer. Allah removes the distractions not to leave you empty, but to fill you with something far deeper, His presence. And when that connection is felt, silence is no longer lonely. It becomes sacred. It becomes a place where your heart and Allah meet, without pretenses or performance. You no longer fear being alone, because you've learned that solitude with Him is never solitude at all. It's peace. It's guidance. It's home. Sometimes words only reopen wounds that were finally starting to close. We think that talking will ease the pain, but often it only reminds us of what we're trying to forget. In silence, though, something different happens. You begin to feel your pain without being consumed by it. You don't try to explain it or fix it. You just sit with it. And in that quiet, something inside you begins to heal. The ache that once felt unbearable slowly softens, and the heart learns that not every pain needs to be spoken to be released. Silence is like a gentle embrace from Allah, unseen but deeply felt. It's where He teaches you that your tears are not a sign of weakness, but a form of worship. Every tear that falls in silence carries a message the tongue could never express. It's in that sacred stillness that your heart speaks a language only Allah understands. The pain turns into prayer, the tears into trust, and the silence itself becomes a conversation between your soul and your Creator. In that space of quiet, your heart begins to breathe again. The heavy weight you've been carrying starts to lift, not because the situation has changed, but because you have. Silence gives you the strength to see your pain from a higher place, a place of wisdom, of patience, of surrender. It's where you realize that healing doesn't come from the absence of pain, but from the presence of Allah within the pain. There are moments in life when no advice, no words, and no comfort from others can reach the depth of what you feel. That's when Allah calls you into silence, not to leave you, but to meet you there. In that stillness, you find Him closer than you ever imagined. You realize that the pain was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to draw you closer, to cleanse you, to make you whole again. So when words fail, let silence speak. Let your heart rest in the quiet remembrance of the one who knows every wound and every whisper. Because sometimes silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means healing is happening in ways you cannot yet see. In that sacred quiet, your soul learns to breathe again, to hope again, and to trust again. Silence has a way of slowing you down in a world that rushes everything. We are taught to chase, to fix, to control every moment of our lives. But silence reminds us that some things are not meant to be forced. Healing takes time, and silence gives that time room to breathe. It gently teaches the heart to stop demanding answers right away and to instead trust the unseen process. What feels like a pause is often Allah's way of preparing you for something greater than what you were asking for. When you sit in silence, you begin to notice how impatient the heart can be. It wants immediate relief, instant clarity, and quick comfort. But silence humbles that part of you. It teaches you to sit with discomfort, to let the ache stay a little longer, and to believe that even in that ache, there is wisdom. Patience doesn't grow when everything goes right. It grows when nothing seems to. And it's in the stillness, when you cannot see progress, that your faith is truly refined. In those quiet moments, you start to realize that waiting is not wasted time. It's sacred time. It's the space where Allah is working on your heart, removing what doesn't serve you, shaping what will sustain you. Every delay, every unanswered prayer is a lesson wrapped in silence. You begin to see that silence is not the absence of action, but the presence of divine timing. What looks like stillness on the outside is transformation happening deep within. As silence deepens, you learn to let go of control. You stop asking when and why and start saying, I trust. You surrender the need to understand everything and start to rest in the knowledge that Allah understands even what you can't put into words. Patience becomes no longer about waiting for something to happen, but about being content with where you are while trusting that what's meant for you will never miss you. Eventually, silence teaches you that every pause has a purpose. You stop seeing delays as punishments and begin to recognize them as preparation. Allah doesn't make you wait to test you. He makes you wait to strengthen you. Because sometimes before He gives you what you want, He needs to grow you into someone who can carry it. And in that silence, the heart that once struggled to wait learns the beauty of peace. When the grace of patience and the quiet power of trusting Allah's timing, there is a kind of strength that doesn't shout, doesn't argue, doesn't explain. It's the quiet strength that chooses silence when everything inside you wants to respond. The world often mistakes silence for weakness, but it is, in truth, one of the greatest signs of inner power. It's the moment you rise above the noise and choose peace over pride. You stop needing to prove yourself because your heart knows that Allah sees what others cannot. There will always be moments when people misunderstand you, when their words sting and their actions leave you speechless. The heart wants to defend itself, to speak, to correct. But silence becomes your protection. It shields you from saying things in anger that you might later regret. It guards your dignity when others lose theirs. It reminds you that not every battle is worth fighting, especially when Allah Himself is the one who defends the truth. Silence also reveals who you are when the world tests your character. It shows that your peace cannot be stolen by someone's opinion or judgment. You learn that reacting to every negativity only feeds it, while silence starves it of power. The calm heart doesn't need to win arguments. It wins by keeping its peace. You begin to see that silence is not about retreating. It's about rising above. It's a declaration that your heart values peace more than proving a point. When you hold your tongue, you create space for reflection. You give yourself time to breathe, to think, and to seek guidance before responding. You start to realize that silence gives clarity, and clarity brings wisdom. Sometimes, in that pause, Allah softens what anger had hardened. He reminds you that dignity isn't in how loud you speak, but in how gracefully you remain quiet. What you withhold in patience, He rewards in peace. Over time, you begin to see how silence becomes your armor. It protects your heart from bitterness, from regret, from the weight of unnecessary words. It's not about being passive. It's about being at peace. The one who trusts Allah doesn't rush to defend themselves because they know that the truth always finds its way, even without their voice. So you choose silence not because you have nothing to say, but because your soul has found something far more valuable to keep peace. When life gets too noisy, it's easy to forget who you are. You start to live on autopilot, reacting to everything around you, losing touch with the voice within. You listen to people's opinions more than you listen to your own soul. But when silence enters, it feels like a mirror being placed in front of you. You begin to see yourself again, not through the eyes of others, but through the quiet truth that lives inside your heart. In silence, you begin to understand what you've been running from. The emotions you've buried, the pain you've ignored, the questions you've been too afraid to ask. They all rise to the surface. And though it feels uncomfortable at first, you realize it's necessary. Because healing only begins when you stop hiding from yourself. Silence gives you the courage to face your own heart, to look at the parts that ache, and to finally start mending them with sincerity and prayer. As the noise fades, clarity begins to form. The confusion that once clouded your heart starts to clear, and you can finally hear the whispers of faith that had been drowned out. You begin to see the difference between what you want and what you need, between what was meant for you and what was never yours. In that stillness, your soul begins to breathe again. You realize that peace was never lost. It was simply waiting for you to slow down enough to feel it. It's in those quiet moments that you feel closest to Allah. When the heart is stripped of distractions, it becomes sensitive to His presence. You feel His mercy in your breath, His love in your calm, His guidance in your thoughts. You realize that you were never truly alone. It was just the noise that made you forget. In silence, Allah reminds you that He has always been near, waiting for you to turn back to Him with a heart that finally listens. Eventually, silence becomes a home you return to, not an emptiness you escape from. You begin to crave that stillness because it's where you find truth, peace, and connection. You no longer fear being alone because you've discovered that solitude with Allah is the sweetest companionship. In that quiet space, you find yourself again, softer, stronger, and closer to the one who never stopped waiting for your heart to return. So take a moment today to sit in silence, not to escape the world, but to meet the one who created it. Because sometimes the loudest healing happens in the quietest moments.